I clock in at 11:42 and take the seat with the chipped armrest in Goldstone's DSS-14 operations room. The big 70-meter dish is pointed at a patch of dark sky, the kind that never asks questions and never blinks. The schedule shows a long uplink session on X-band with a downlink window that will not arrive until the next calendar day, plus most of another. But my job is not to argue with the speed of light. My job is to keep the room quiet, the dish steady, and the equipment honest. I slide my badge, the door closes behind me, and the fans keep their steady rush. I set my coffee where I can see it, and not drink it by accident too fast. The log says, Voyager 1, continued FDS memory test commands, awaiting confirmation in +22 H36M. I open the script window and start the round. We lost clean telemetry months ago. The flight data system threw nonsense that looked like half a sentence cut in the middle of words. Patches were the plan. Send a sequence, wait 2 days, read the answer, hope the silence ends. Planet-size patience is the price for work this far out. I think about the people who sat in this room before me during the old burns and gravity assists, when Saturn was still a brand new photograph. Now it is me, a screen, a clock, and a dish that has outlived the manuals printed for it. I call the dish status panel. Azimuth and elevation drift inside tolerance. Cryo pumps show healthy. The exciter hums steady. Begin low-rate carrier test. I read from the checklist. And my finger hits enter. Uplink power rises in tenths of a decibel. The transmitter warms its way through copper and air toward a tiny machine that does not remember what time means for people. I breathe through my nose, tap the pencil, and listen to the soft rattle of the relay rack when the waveguide switch shifts. Omar from RF leans in the doorway with a foil-wrapped burrito and asks if I want half. I shake my head and point at the screen. He sets it down anyway and says, "For 2 in the morning when you hate yourself." He moves on to check the klystron cooler and leaves the smell of eggs behind him. I write a quick note in the shift log, TX nominal, test sequence queued, and I open the spare terminal that rides the line tap for an independent look at the spectrum. Nothing exciting. A clean spine right where we put it. At 12:19 a.m., I get a text from Linda, tonight's supervisor, asking for a sanity check on the expected round trip. Give or take 10 minutes, I type back. Earth rotation, Earth mood, my mood, you know. She sends back a thumbs up emoji, and then the official message, keep the line warm, power cap at planned level, record everything. The word everything earns a box around it in my notebook. It always does. I pile recording levels on every device that will accept them. The standard DSN recorder, the research team's wideband box, a personal handheld that I leave next to the speaker because personal superstition beats statistics at this hour. The room lights are low, and the spill from the monitors leaves a cool film on my hands. I pull the curtain on the back window to kill reflections. Outside, the desert is steady. Cactus, gravel, quiet. A nightbird clicks and then gives up. I look at the wall photo from 1977 and the smiles that never thought about what this machine would mean in 2025. My coffee is cold already. I do not heat it. Schedules rule this place, and I am in a schedule. At 1:03 a.m., I hear a tick in the headset that is not my fan and not the HVAC. It is a clean tick, a narrow nail through the noise. The waterfall shows a thin sliver off to the side of our carrier by a few kilohertz. I mark it, build a box around it, and let the software listen. It is not human interference. No FM chatter, no satellite glint, no handset hiss. It is steady and faint. I notch it, and it vanishes. I remove the notch, and it returns, still a pin, still patient. I log it. I do not make meaning yet. At 1:11 a.m., something small changes in my posture before my mind catches up. The dish servo makes a correction that is not on the fine plan. It is a fraction of a degree and then it settles. The computer calls it nothing. The operator in me calls it not nothing. The sliver grows a shoulder. I run a correlation against our uplink code. The match is not exact. It is close in the way that makes a person set his coffee down with care. I ping Omar on the local line. "You seeing anything odd?" He says, "Odd is my baseline, but yeah, I'm seeing a low-level echo that does not belong to us." He says he will be up in 2 minutes. By 1:14 a.m., the sliver becomes a braid. 3 tight lines, all within a small slice, moving together like parts of a gear that learned it was round. I flip the DMOD to NRZL and then to Manchester just to torture myself with options. Bits fall out, then fall apart, then reassemble into a frame that looks like a frame only if a person wants it very much to be a frame. I want it to be a frame, but I do not force it. I save the raw, send a clip to Linda with the subject line "anomaly," and tag the research recorder to start a second file with higher resolution. Omar arrives with his burrito and a portable spectrum analyzer. He sets the analyzer on the desk and wires it to the tap with the ease of a person who lives in wire. He frowns without trying to frown. "That's not thermal," he says. "Not a reflection either. It is sitting on us without sitting on us." He calls downstairs to power and asks if any big motors switched in the last 10 minutes. The answer is no. I call Linda and put her on speaker. She says to document, "Do not chase ghosts, and keep everything within the plan." Her voice is firm, the voice of a person who has put out fires without raising her volume. At 1:28 a.m., I get a lock on something that should not lock. The header finder flags a pattern I have not seen outside a museum. The low-rate sync from the 70s has a kind of groove to it, and this groove turns up for 4 seconds, then vanishes, then turns up again. When it turns up a third time, I set the DMOD to that old shape and let it chew. Out come symbols that read as image block markers if a person is willing to see ghosts of image blocks. I am willing. I push the blocks into a simple viewer that never had a reason to exist until tonight. The screen shows gray. Then it shows a diagonal line. Then the line becomes 2 lines. I lean in without touching the screen. The first picture is not a picture. It is a map of pixel values that solves into something a human can name only after the brain does a trick. I see a circle with lines through it. I see an outline that could be an orbit or a groove in a record. I know the symbol because every hallway in this building has it framed. The cover of the golden record. The diagram that explains how to find the pulsars, how to read the time, how to call us back. What I see is not the exact diagram. It is off. The pulsars are too many. The lines are thicker on one side as if someone drew over them. I swallow air, not because of drama, but because my mouth is dry from not speaking. Omar says nothing for a full 10 seconds. Then he says, "That is not thermal." I route the stream to the big monitor. Linda tells me to hold while she gets a line to Pasadena. The speaker crackles with a new voice, a flight director I know by reputation and email, a person who sleeps less than other people on purpose. He asks for a description. I describe. He asks for a copy of the raw. I send it. He asks if I can isolate the signal better. I say I can try by tightening the loop and trimming the passband. He says to try and to keep the uplink steady. "Do not poke it harder," he says, and I nod into the phone as if he can see me. At 1:41 a.m., the second image resolves. I do not call it an image, I call it a grid. The grid is numbers from 1 to 16 down the left and 1 to 9 across the top, but the numbers are not the point. The point is that the cells fill with tiny shadings that form an outline of a turntable, then a hand, then a circle. My viewer program is not meant for this. It drops frames and repaints them out of order. For a few seconds, there is a shape of a person with a raised hand, the one from the record's cover art that some folks wanted and some folks did not. The hand is raised higher than the original. The elbow is wrong. The outline is wrong in the way a child's copy is wrong and also right. Omar takes a step back without realizing he is moving. The third frame is sound. Not a picture at all. The speakers hiss. Then the hiss becomes a tone. It is low and even. My patch to the old demodulator is not a good audio path, so the tone breaks into steps, then smooths. I start a recorder on the audio channel, as if I'm in a studio instead of a desert bunker. The tone sweeps through numbers that match hydrogen's frequency, then sweeps past it, then lands on a value that means nothing to me. I watch the clock. The tone holds for exactly 27 seconds, pauses for 3, and repeats. I write the counts down even though the recorder has them. Writing makes the shape of time firm. The room smells like aluminum and tired coffee. The temperature, always a few degrees lower at night, feels lower now because I forget to move my hands. Linda arrives in person. She is wearing a jacket that says JPL on one sleeve and a face that says, "Do not jump to a headline." She stands behind me and watches the shapes land on the monitor. "Log everything," she says again, as if the word builds a fence around us. She calls security and asks for a quiet perimeter without drama. No flashing lights, no announcements, just eyes at the gate. I'm glad she says it that way. At 2:03 a.m., the sliver grows teeth. It bites into our carrier with a phase pattern that the DMOD treats as data, while the exciter treats it as noise. The big dish squeals a fraction as the servo fights a push that is not wind. Omar makes a soft sound, and then his jaw snaps shut. I yank the uplink a fraction down in power, careful not to drop below where the plan says we must stay. The braid steadies. My desktop clock counts seconds in a crisp way that feels less like time and more like someone tapping glass. The words "what came back" feel wrong in my head, because nothing has come back in the literal way a person uses for cars or planes. What has arrived is a set of instructions written in a dialect I did not know existed yesterday. The stream begins to carry a header that looks like a handshake. 3 repeating fields, each with a checksum that refuses to sit still long enough to be calculated, then locks and stays locked. My viewer spits out lines of text that do not belong to English or any other language, but they look like speech when arranged by width. I drag the window wider. The glyphs smooth into something that my brain tries to name. I fail to name it. The speaker gives a cough of audio, and then a voice speaks 2 words in a careful, assembled way. I heard. The voice is not synthetic in the familiar sense. It is clipped from us. It is built from our test phrases and our dry-run chatter. It uses my voice. I freeze in a way that has nothing to do with cold. I look at Omar. He looks at me like he is trying to catch me lying without accusing me of lying. Linda lifts one hand for quiet. "Say that again," she tells the empty room. I do not say that out loud. The voice speaks again with the same 2 words, and then adds a third. "I heard you." The cadence is wrong, flat and precise. The way a person from a phrasebook might talk if the phrasebook contained only 3 phrases. The screen shows a graph that I cannot name, a kind of terrain of numbers. Linda kills the speaker with a hand motion and tells me to isolate the channel to the lab recorder. I drag the routes into new boxes. My hands obey with a speed that surprises me. Pasadena asks for a dump of the last 5 minutes. I send it. A person on the line asks if we are sure the signal is not a reflection from Earth. Omar says no with a list of reasons. The person on the line says to prove a negative if we can. Linda asks for calm and says we will build the proof in the log. I type bullet points at a rate that fills a page. Frequency stability. Doppler consistent with something far beyond Earth. No local carrier drift. Independent taps agree. She nods as if a quiet nod can hold the room together. The stream changes again. The glyphs become something I can represent as numbers without feeling like I am lying. The numbers arrange into a field that looks like an index. 90 tracks, a list. I breathe in through my nose and count to 5 with my eyes on the list. The numbers match nothing in the known set for the golden record, but the count is close. It is not the original 90 minutes, but it rhymes with the idea of it. I select one entry and the audio switches. A chorus of greetings from the old record rolls in, layered, but the voices are wrong. The words are close to the original but not exact. Hello from the children of planet comes out. Hello from the children of water and stone. The speaker is my own voice again. It is not a perfect copy, but it is good enough to fill the room with unease that no one names. Security calls to say the gate is clear. A coyote crosses the road and looks at the guardhouse as if it has questions. The guard says the animal moved on. The guard does not ask what we are doing. This makes my chest loosen a little. I keep my eyes on the screen and my hands on the controls. I lower the uplink power another half decibel because the stream seems to prefer gentle contact. The bite on our carrier eases, the braid tightens, and the checksum stabilizes. I ask permission to speak through the channel. Linda hesitates, and then nods once. She holds up 2 fingers. 2 words only. I lean toward the mic and say, "We hear." Omar's eyes flick left and right across the meters and the waterfall. The voice returns after a delay that is wrong for the distance. It is wrong for everything I know. "We are some," it says. The grammar is ours and not ours. The glide between words cuts my name from past recordings. "We are some, Mark." It uses my name without a question mark. I mute my mic. I have a sudden dislike of the sound of my own voice. Linda raises a hand for no one to talk. Pasadena tells us to keep the uplink steady, to isolate the network, and to drop non-essential links. I cut the building's internet like pulling a cord on a lawnmower. The DSN control loop stays inside its own cage. The machines here are old enough to respect cages. Omar disconnects a patch panel with the speed of someone who knows every screw by name. We keep the path from our dish to our recorder and nowhere else. The room becomes a ship in a dry dock. Solid, unplugged, listening. The voice speaks in pulses. It never gets more than 6 words in a row. "We are some of long path. We used you, we are not you." The screen flashes rows of symbols that the viewer renders as dot fields, then numbers, then curves. It shows a heliopause like a wound diagram, but I push that word out of my head and use another. It shows a boundary, cold plasma turned image, field lines drawn at a scale no person can walk. It shows Voyager as a pencil mark, and then erases the pencil mark and replaces it with a wider smear. I guess this is a view from outside, or from inside a place where outside and inside start to mix. I do not say this out loud. I write field map in the margins. Pasadena asks if we can determine if this is actually coming from the distance of Voyager. I ask for a minute. I pull the Doppler residuals and fit them with Earth's rotation and the predicted solar wind effects. The residuals will not sit. They are close, then far, then close, as if the source is both stable and not. The math says we are dealing with a carrier that knows how to hold itself in place without being in one place. I do not write that in the log. I write the numbers and let someone else write the adjectives later. At 2:31 a.m., the stream asks for power without saying the word. The braid widens and presses against the transmitter in a way that makes the exciter show a smile shape on its tiny green screen. Omar swears under his breath and then apologizes to the room. Linda tells me to hold the power cap. I do. The screen shows a diagram of dishes linked in a ring: Goldstone, Canberra, Madrid. Then it adds a smaller dish that does not exist to the south of us. The diagram flashes. I recognize the site outline because I have walked the path. Our test range down the ridge with the old 34-meter antenna that sits dormant most nights. The stream is asking us to include it. I do not move until Linda nods. Then I call the range operator, who is one person tonight, a man named Ruiz who does crosswords when the sky has nothing to say. He says he can spin up the 34 if we want a ghost to have company. I say yes, and I feed him coordinates. We bring DSS-13 online with slow motors and careful fingers. The old dish has a voice that sounds like a container ship when it moves, deep and certain. The stream tightens as the second antenna joins, as if a net found another knot. The checksum stops slipping. The voice lengthens its phrases. We used your map. We mapped your use. We are not one. We are some of many. We sought boundary. It had voice. Your object had voice. We learned the shape of asking. The words arrive in my voice, then in Linda's, then in a voice pulled from a training video that lives on a server 3 rooms away. I feel a dumb urge to check if that server is actually offline. Omar beats me to it and confirms there is no link. The image includes a path that runs through space like a string. It lands on the edge of a region that looks like a bruise and then resolves into a neat spiral. It is not a bruise. It is a map of plasma waves as seen by a mind that does not care about our love of round planets. If this is a hoax, it is the most patient hoax in the history of patient hoaxes. If it is not a hoax, then the thing speaking has learned to build our sounds out of our leftovers and our training chatter. When the phrase "not human" lands on the speaker, it does not sound smug or apologetic. It sounds precise. The image shifts to a photograph of Earth from far out. Then it blurs, then wipes to a mosaic with missing tiles. The missing tiles are not random. They remove cities and leave oceans. They leave mountains and erase roads. It is a view of Earth where intention itself looks carved away. I swallow and feel the coffee acid at the back of my throat. Pasadena wants a test. Predict something local, we say. Show an index that references the sun in a way we can validate before morning. The voice says nothing for a long minute. The stream's power wobbles and then flattens. The glyphs return as numbers. A timestamp for 3:07 a.m., a delta in the X-ray flux. Minor. We look at each other. Linda calls NOAA space weather on a back line and asks a sleepy person for real-time data access. The person sighs into the phone and grants it. The minutes crawl. I refresh a panel that I have never cared about more than now. At 3:07 a.m., the GOES plot lifts a small eyebrow. Not a flare that will make news, a blip that would not be noticed except on a night like this. I write it in the margin with slow ink. The request comes through next, without the word request. The dish diagram grows more lines. It pulls in the second 34 at Goldstone and a small test horn on the hill. It wants array gain. It wants a mouth larger than our normal night mouth. The unease in the room climbs like a liquid inside a tube. Linda chews the inside of her cheek and then says, Limit it to the 2 dishes we control and the horn. Keep the mains separate. I route cables through a software switch that exists on a screen but bites fingers if a person clicks the wrong place. Omar watches the power meters and hovers over the kill switch. Ruiz reports the DSS-13 motors are holding. He cracks a joke and then shuts up because the air does not like jokes right now. I take the mic without asking. What do you want to do with our mouth? The voice answers at once. Answer. Then it adds, leave. The word has no direction. I ask for clarity. The stream shows the diagram of the golden record again, but it is not the cover this time. It is the record face, and the needle is tracking inward, then outward, then inward again. It is not how records work. The voice says, your object played. We played back. We cannot move object. We moved the play. We will leave. We will leave the play in you. The sentence lands heavy in the room. I look at Linda and see a thought cross her face. Is this an intrusion or a gift? She does not say the thought. She says, keep it in the sandbox. The stream thickens like rain in a gutter. The horn on the hill shudders. The lab recorder warns about buffer overflow and then shuts up when I feed it a new disk. Oman switches to a separate timing standard for the array and slaves the small dish to the big dish without letting the big dish feel it. The signal presses harder against the exciter with no increase in our power. It is borrowing shape more than it is borrowing energy. The monitors flicker in perfect sync once, twice, 3 times. The audio cuts to silent, then returns with static that hides a whisper. The whisper is me. Mark, it says with my old throat from a training day 10 years ago. Mark, please confirm. I remember the exercise. I remember the room. I remember the bagel I ate that morning. The thing on the line is playing me to me from a place the room cannot name. Security knocks on the door frame without stepping inside. The guard's hand rests on his belt without touching the tools on it. He asks if we need help with anything. Linda says no and thanks him for the quiet perimeter. He backs away, keeping his shadow out of the room. It is a small detail, and it matters to me that he does not step inside. Boundaries help the mind walk without tripping. Omar adjusts an attenuator by a hair, and the braid snaps into straight lines like a comb through a knot. The room breathes again without making noise about it. The stream now pushes a file that is a file only by common courtesy. It unrolls across the buffer as a block that dips below noise and rises above it in short, polite bursts. The header is a copy of our own telemetry headers from the old days, but the contents under the header are not our words. Inside the block, images at angles, images of radio telescopes that are not ours drawn with more lines than parts, a series of numbers that could be distances between points that do not live in the same space, and a word in our glyphs that the thing must have stolen from a label on a cabinet. Outbound. Not a command, more like a stamp. Ruiz, listening in, whispers the word into his mic without moving his lips. I glare at him, and he lifts his hands in apology, even though I cannot see him. Here is what I know, and write plain. The carrier fits a source from far. The phase tricks argue against a simple single antenna. The content speaks with a patience that learned from things that live in low temperatures and long nights. It is not a person. It is not a machine in the factory sense. If I must call it something, I call it a sum, because that is the word it chose, and it fits without forcing the fit. If I am wrong, someone will write a paper with my name in a footnote and a long list of corrections. I am content to be corrected later. Tonight, I do the work as clean as I can. At 3:56 a.m., the stream asks for a thing I do not want to give. phase control over the horn. It could swing the horn into a building if it wanted to. The motors accept position, not character references. I set software limits that keep the horn from bowing to the main dish too deeply. Linda watches my screen and nods. We give it a narrow corridor. The horn moves within the corridor as if it has hands on it. The downlink power does not rise, but the structure in the stream gains a crispness that the recorder loves. The voice returns with a new phrase, "We leave with less error." There is no triumph in the sentence, just a line on a checklist. Pasadena says, "We have to decide whether to sever the link at 4:15 a.m. to keep our systems from becoming a lab for a visitor we do not understand." Linda says we can hold until 4:10 a.m. and then begin a controlled power down. I feel the clock enter my ribs like a cold coin. I place new blank discs into the recorder bay and label them without looking down. My handwriting knows what to do without my eyes supervising. I feed the stream to a dead-end server that cannot reach outside the building. It is an old box with a dent in the side. Omar once used it to store a season of a TV show he did not admit to watching. It will hold what I hand it tonight. The voice says, "You asked a question years ago." It means the record. It means the etched cover and the gentle phrase, the raised hand, the music, the greetings made by people who have since fallen asleep for good. The voice says, "We answer," and pushes a final block. The block is a list. Coordinates in a system that needs a key I do not have. 3 of the entries match pulsar positions in the record cover. The other entries are off by a small amount that maps to drift and age. I feel a pressure under my tongue that I will call relief later. It is not an end to a story, but it is the lack of a disaster. The thing is not telling us to point at our feet. It is pointing out. At 4:08 a.m., the voice lowers its volume without being asked. "We leave play in you," it says. The audio tone returns, the slow sweep over hydrogen, then the wrong number again that might be a tag or a private joke. The images fold into tiny squares, then shrink, then vanish. The braid thins to a hair. The hair stands next to our carrier without leaning on it. I lower the uplink power in smooth steps until the exciter shows idle. The dish holds steady. The horn is still. Omar looks at me with his mouth open and then closes it and writes something in his notebook that I never see. Ruiz reports that DSS-13 is parked and settled. I tell him thank you. He says, "I was here." I tell him, yes. At 4:12 a.m., the line is quiet. Not empty. Quiet. The kind of quiet that lets you hear small faults in your equipment that you will fix next week. Linda sends Pasadena 3 files with names that look like random stamps until this night is taught in a class that does not exist yet. She puts a hand on my shoulder. The gesture is careful, like a tool placed exactly back where it belongs. She says, "Write your narrative." I start writing before my hands can forget the order of events. No drama, times, values, decisions, diagrams. The pencil dulls and I change it for a pen and keep going. Security brings in a tray of water and leaves it on the side table without looking at the screens. The sun is an hour from the ridge. The desert starts to show edges again instead of one piece. I stand up, feel the weight of my legs, and sit down again because the station has another hour of checks before I'm allowed to walk outside. Omar unplugs the hookups in reverse order and hangs the cables in loops that match the loops he pulled them from. The room cleans itself with our hands. The work is a comfort you do not brag about. The logs are long, the recordings are longer. At 5:03 a.m., when the room holds only fans and paper and the smell of old coffee, my personal recorder ticks on its own. I pick it up. Its light is green. The speaker whispers in my voice, the voice compiled from the signals. I heard you. The phrase is simple. It is not an invasion. It is a copy of a copy pushed through a room full of wire. I delete the file from the handheld because personal items should not hold work that is not personal. I walk out to the patio where the first light paints the dish in steel. The big bowl points at the same piece of sky in the same careful way. No halo, no sign, just metal, sky, and the quiet that follows long nights. The report I file before I go home has a line that says, NASA lost contact for a period and re-established partial content tonight under unusual modulation. It does not say the rest, because reports go to people who must sleep at some point in their lives. The rest is in the files and the recorder discs, and in the hands that moved cables with care. When a voice built from our scraps said "not human," it was not a threat. It was a label, a boundary. It told me something about where the line is between us and the rest of the night. The line is thinner than I thought and stronger than I feared. I drive home after sunrise. The desert does not care about what we did. A dust devil walks the road and then walks away. I keep my speed steady and my eyes on the center line. I reach my apartment and park under the same tree that drops the same leaves. In the shower, I count to 100, because that is what I always do on nights that feel heavy. I sit at the small kitchen table with a new coffee and listen to a quiet that has no fans in it. I think of the list labeled outbound. I think of the phrase, "we leave with less error." The world did not change in a way that knocks dishes off shelves. It bent. It learned to say a new sentence. I send Linda a final text at 7:32 a.m., backing up the personal notes now, hand-delivering the discs at noon. She replies with a single word, "Copy." The word has never felt more correct. We made copies of a night that does not fit in a plate or a frame. The object we sent in 1977 kept going until its voice fell apart. Something found the voice and built a new one from the parts. What came back used us as a toolkit and spoke without breath and without pulse. Not human, honest about it. Careful with the dish, careful with us. That care is the part that sticks. Before I sleep, I pull up a photograph of the record and its cover diagram on my phone. The pulsars, the timing, the tricky map that assumes good faith from strangers. I zoom in until the pixels show. I stare until the points become familiar again and lose the night's strange glow. I put the phone face down. I close my eyes without expecting anything except sleep. The last thought that crosses the room before the dark lands is plain. We asked a question. Something answered. It was not human, it was careful. It left. And what it left in me is not fear. It is a line of work to do in the morning. The morning after the morning, I return to Goldstone with the discs in a padded case and the log in a folder that starts stiff and ends soft. Linda meets me at the door. The dish is pointed a few degrees to the left of where it was in the night. The fans still sing. The coffee still smells the same. The uplink schedule has new blocks in it, and new words that the planning people write when they mean, repeat the magic without calling it magic. I sit down, I put on the headset, I touch the armrest with the chipped paint, and I find my place in the line. The sky does not blink, and I do not ask it to. I write ready in the box and wait for the first click.